Right, good morning, everybody. Apologies for the 4-minute lateness of this meeting starting. We had a bit of an IT glitch. Okay, thank you very much indeed. So this is the meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council Cabinet. I'm Bridget Smith. I'm the going to chair the meeting. The meeting will be live streamed, so please make sure your phones and so on are off, which I think I've done. We'll take questions from Cabinet members who are in the room before any who are online, but I'm not sure there are going to be any online. But voting will only, if most decisions are made consensually, but if there is a vote, then it'll just be people who are in the room. So I'll take questions from Cabinet members first, and then other councillors attending either in the room or online. So thank you very much. So apologies for absence. Pippa?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Natalie Warren-Green and Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you very, very much indeed. And declarations of interest pertaining to today's agenda? None? Okay, thank you. And minutes of the last meeting. Members are asked to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday the 25th of June as correct record. Are there any issues from these? Therefore, move the approval of those minutes as a correct record, seconded by Councillor Milnes. So, everyone agree? Thank you very much indeed. Item 4, announcements. I don't have any announcements, and I don't believe we have any public questions. No, fine. So, update from Scrutiny and Overview. We don't have an official representative from Scrutiny and Overview, but Councillor Ellington is here, who I gather will, if any issues come up, then we can ask you. And thank you very much indeed. Thank you for attending. So they covered the mobile warden item, the 3Cs ICT, and the cost of living report. So it's a nice, short, pithy report. Thank you to Ian Senior for that. So moving on to item 7, which is the Q1 performance report, and John Williams is going to introduce this, and I'm very happy to second it. So over to you, John.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, everyone. The Q1 report is broadly satisfactory. There are 2 areas, though, where indicates intervention is required. One is in housing voids, which we know that particular target is a very challenging target, way above the average void level for councils with their own properties. And the other intervention is in waste and staff sickness days, where we have a number of long-term sick operatives. But if anyone has any questions, I'm sure the officers will be able to give detailed responses. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any questions?
That's our thanks to Kevin Ledger.
And huge thanks, as always, to Kevin Ledger for these reports, which actually just get better and better, really, more and more accessible. So very grateful to all Kevin's efforts, as always. So the recommendation, which I'll get to in a second, recommendation that Cabinet review the KPI results and comments at Appendix A and progress against the business plan action at Appendix B. Recommend where appropriate any actions required to address issues, and note that a review of our KPIs is due to take place, including input from councillors to inform a revised suite of KPIs as we move towards the 25-26 financial year. That's a really important thing, because we've, as Councillor Williams has said, some of our KPI targets are really not fit for purpose. So there's a very interesting piece of work going on at the moment to make sure that they are more meaningful. So do members do members agree with the recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Anyone voting against? Anyone abstaining? No, thank you. So the recommendations are approved. So moving swiftly on to the equality scheme at item 8. Now, Councillor Toomey Hawkins was going to present this, but I'm afraid she hasn't been able to come in, so I will do my best. So, equality is very much, it's never been off our agenda. It's back on government's agenda now as well, thankfully. The most important thing is that our actions are meaningful and that we're not paying lip service to equality, the need for a really robust equality scheme, and it isn't just a PR act. So we have an action plan, a 12-page action plan, I think, from pages 10 to 22, with some really interesting work there. The benefits of doing this well are both moral but also financial. The report says that the McGregor-Smith review showed there's a benefit to the UK economy of about 24 billion if we manage to achieve full representation of BAME individuals across the labour market, both through improved participation and progression. So, you know, financial as well as it being, you know, the right thing to do. And hopefully at South Cambridgeshire, you know, we will be able to demonstrate that we are at the forefront of doing what is right and proper here. I believe also some work is ongoing to embed equality champions within our organisation, within the members, and that will be cross-party. And I think there's a meeting happening this afternoon to kick some of that work off, because it's something it's important to all of us cross-party. So I think Peter MacDonald is going to second this. Peter, do you want to add anything?
No, just to say, Leader, that I think everybody's really pleased with the extensive document. Very good data on the infographic in terms of the profile of South Cambridgeshire. So I really welcome it and support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any questions from anybody? Yes, Councillor Batchelor.
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, just another question, just something I think worth mentioning is that we're about to gain accreditation for the White Ribbon organisation, which we put a lot of work in. It was going to take a year to gain that, but we've got it in 3 or 4 months, so good work there. Thank you.
That's good news. Kate, is there anything you want to add to what you've said here?
I don't really have anything to add, just to say we're doing a rafter of work across the council, which we tried to capture in the document. Upcoming, we have the Anti-Racism Charter, the White Ribbon accreditation, and I'm also meeting with HR to discuss things like the Disability Confidence Scheme as well. So we'll be continuing the work on for at least the next 12 months and onwards for the next 4 years as detailed in the plan.
Lovely. Do you want to add anything about the equality champions, how you see that working?
We are meeting this afternoon with the political assistants, and we're going to sort of trying to figure out how best to engage with members and how it would work best for you guys to meet, and then staff will come and advise and support on whatever members would like to direct, really. As long as it's within the parameters of the council, I can't see why we couldn't facilitate something. So I'm happy to answer anyone's questions and support you guys.
Thank you, and thank you very much for all your work. And I think Emma and Phil have also been involved in it. So thank you to all of you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Leader. Just to say that when it gets to the stage of engagement with councillors, then myself and my group will obviously support in any way we can with the policy going forward. And we quite rightfully focus a lot on gender, sexuality, discrimination and race. But one thing I think really important for local government is age. There's still a lot of age discrimination at both ends. And we know we've had things where actually women are quite often discriminated against once they reach menopause, and younger people can be discriminated against for experience. So that's just something that going forward, I feel like, you know, the council's in a good position with the others, but we probably could try and do some more work in relation to age discrimination. I think that would go a long way to setting a good example to the wider community in South Cambs.
Thank you. I'm up for that. Marvellous. Thank you very much indeed. Any other questions? No? Okay. So the recommendation is to approve the equality scheme for 2024 to 2028. Is everybody in agreement?
Agreed.
Agreed. Nobody voting against? Anybody abstaining? No. So therefore, that is approved unanimously. Thank you. And moving on to item 9 now is the 24-25 revenue and capital budget monitoring, quarter 1. John Williams is going to introduce this, and I think Councillor Milnes is going to second it. So, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Leader. As with all quarter ones in the financial year, it has to be this cannot be taken as a forecast at year end, and you'll see from paragraph 25 that the position at the end of quarter 1, which finished at the end of July, was that we had an underspend of just over 2 million. But as you'll read in the report, this was due to various factors such as us receiving grants that we didn't think we were going to receive, or income that we had assumed we were going to receive in quarter 2. So, as I say, I wouldn't take too much by the outcome in quarter 1. As I say, this is always, difficult at the end of the first quarter, where we have obviously things happen that we haven't planned for. But as I say, it was a good start though, being 2 million under budget in the first quarter. It's not a bad start for the year.
No, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Milnes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to support the report, thank you, and the work that's been undertaken to compose it. Thank you.
Any questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I think one thing which I think might be a bit of a typo is on page 104 on the figure for the Greater Cambridgeshire planning. It's currently in as a variance. It's in a positive as opposed to credited figure. So I think there might be some brackets missing there just to make that accurate. Otherwise, it doesn't sort of flow with the rest of it. So there's just that, and also on page 118, it goes on to the Camborne offices and the spend there, which is a considerable amount of spend. I appreciate it says that it's in line with the budget to date, but given that it's quite a big cost that's in very, very different parts, what is not easily gauged from that is that are we overall, which is fine, but if we're seeing significant spends, because when we look on page 122, there's still quite a lot of that way to go, still £500,000 to be spent. So is it that we are having overspends, but we are in track overall, or are we coming in on budget on those particular line items? So I feel a little bit more information in the text, or perhaps a breakdown could be sent round to us just so we can see if it's, because it's such a big project, whether it's on the project's the part to date, or whether it's just looking at it overall in budgets. What we don't want to do is then see that later on the line we have a big overspend because this was slightly the way it was formatted. So I think those are the two things that I flagged from a scrutiny point of view for that report.
Thank you. Can I bring Peter Maddox in on whether there is a typo there, and then either Peter or John to right, Peter, if you could sort of comment on whether we're heading for an overspend on the work on the Camborne offices.
So I can confirm, yes, there is a typo. The brackets are missing out. Sorry about that. Sorry, page 122, is it Camborne offices, office adaptation? I can't say it. Adaptations and enhancement line that you're referring to.
So I think Councillor Williams, did I summarise it right? She's saying, there's been not insignificant sum of money spent on the refurbishment of the offices, which in my view was long overdue. Are we going to remain in budget on that project, or are we risking an overspend?
My understanding is that we will be within budget. Okay. I can double check that.
Okay, so I think what Councillor Williams would like is a bit more explanation within the narrative to make that clear.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Williams?
Leader, thank you. It's more, are we budget to progress so far or budget to the overall, if that makes sense? Because if to date we were planning to spend £500,000 on these projects, but it could be that a project is delayed and pushed into the other budget, but it would still appear as in budget because that hasn't happened yet and it was expected to happen a certain quarter. So it's just a bit more detail perhaps on the, because there's lots of projects within that project and it might be helpful to have that more itemised.
Peter?
We'll certainly have that information available. So.
Okay, all right. Anything else? No? Okay. So if there's no more questions, Councillor Wins, did you want to pick up on any of that or? Okay, good. Righty-ho. So, going back to the recommendations that Cabinet considers the report and if satisfied, notes the 24-25 revenue position against the approved revenue budget to date, shown Appendix B, the projected major variances with reason for these variances at Appendices C to 7, and action being taken to address the underlying issues. Note the latest capital programme for 24-25 position and variances, if any, as shown in Appendix D. So, do members agree with the recommendation?
Agree.
Anyone voting against? Anyone abstaining? No, so the recommendation is approved, and I think Fazana was responsible for that report. So many thanks to Fazana for a well presented report as always. So moving on now to item 10, which is the General Fund Medium-Term Financial Strategy. And it's John Williams again is going to present it, and I think John Batchelor is going to second it. Thank you. Over to you again, John.
Thank you, Leader. As you see in the report, and as everyone will recognise, with a new government, we cannot be certain as to what the settlement for next year will be, and what the intention to have a 3-year programme will mean for MTFS at this stage. We just don't know because the government has not indicated what it intends to do. So we won't really be able to see the true picture until later this year, hopefully November, when we have all the facts from the government going forward. But in the current circumstances, you'll see in paragraph 17 that we have made a big effort to improve productivity and find savings in the council. I'm very pleased that this time last year we were looking at a £6.5 million overspend by the end of the 5-year period, and we're now looking at just under 3 million. So in effect, we've sort of halved that, mainly through the transformation project, and also, I have to say, through the 4-day week. So, if things don't change and our assumptions are correct, then that is the outturn, the new outturn. But as I say, there are certainly going to be changes. The government has indicated that local government finance is going to change. So we have to wait that information before we can give a true MTFS outturn. So we're in a difficult position at the moment in not knowing exactly what the government's got planned for us in the future.
Thank you very much. John Batchelor.
Thank you. Happy to second this. As John has pointed out, we're in a situation of simply having the known unknowns. We have to wait until the government gets its act together to be certain where we are. It all looks hopeful, so I'm happy to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from Cabinet members? No? Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Leader. I do note the savings that were, and hopefully we'll get more of a breakdown of that later today. Just something that was said in the introduction of this item in relation to the 4-day week saving money. Previously, when reports have been given, it's been made clear to us that in relation to agency costs, they are overspends on the budget. They're not part of the budgeted cost. Therefore, any savings on agency in relation to the 4-day week are not a saving on the budget. So I'm just trying to understand from the way this was introduced about the 4-day week saving, we know it's going to cost us in relation to the waste crews. We know that the agency staff is not a saving on the budget. So wondering where those savings that referred to have come from.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Leader. Well, as part of the 4-day week trial, we have looked at working practices. And as a result of looking at that, we have actually reduced the number of, for example, we have reduced the number of hard to recruit posts by half, from around 20 to 10. And obviously that is a budget saving, those posts that are in the budget, and that is a budget saving. So some of the 4-day week trial has actually produced productivity improvements and savings in the budget itself, apart from the, as Councillor Williams has said, apart from the additional cost of employing agency staff, which obviously we don't budget for.
Thank you. And as I'd add that, the reduction in agency staff is one element of it. The fact that we're keeping people now and therefore not having to advertise for new jobs, there's obviously savings there as well. So, okay, thank you. Yes, you'd like to come back?
Just a question to the administration. Is it appreciated, though, that the restructuring savings and looking at everybody's jobs, that could have been done without doing a 4-day week? It would be normal practice to review your systems.
No. Thank you. Right. So if there's no more questions, moving on to the recommendations. On page 125, Cabinet's requested to consider the report and, if satisfied, to acknowledge the projected changes in service spending and the overall resources available to the Council over the medium term to 29-30, recommend to full Council a refreshed medium-term financial strategy at Appendix A and updated financial forecast at Appendix B. So do Cabinet members agree with proposals? Anyone voting against? Anyone abstaining? So Cabinet therefore approves the recommendations. Thank you. And item 11 is the fraud strategy. Big article on front of today's Times about the new government's intentions regarding fraud. So this is again Councillor John Williams, and I think Councillor Henry Batchelor is going to second this. So over to you again, John.
Thank you, Leader. The reason why we've reviewed and refreshed our fraud strategies in paragraph 6, I'm delighted that this council decided to set up an independent fraud team, and that fraud team has been very successful in identifying fraud and saving money. And you'll see this report, which has gone through audit and corporate governance. I'm very grateful for the comments that they made on the report. It basically brings it up to date and broadens it a bit, and basically acknowledges the fact that we have now a very effective anti-fraud team on the council, which we didn't have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Batchelor?
Happy to second, Leader. Nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've really upped our game here, and very grateful to all the officers involved. Thank you very much to Tara Nutbean-King for a nice, clear and short report. Any other questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Milnes?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I was very pleased to be introduced to the fraud team. And one of my local tenancies was in breach of their terms and conditions, and quite flagrant, I can't say it.
Flagrantly.
Thank you. Because I've been on holiday too much. It was really very useful to see how the fraud team had been proactive in chasing that particular case, and I look forward to seeing lots more of a similar nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Leader. And obviously these reports on fraud and how we do come to audit and corporate governance. And I think as well as the methods to defraud the taxpayer come forward, this almost needs to be a live document that keeps changing, because in our lifetimes we've already seen a lot of ways that fraud has changed, and it will continue to change. So any effort to tackle that will always be supported by all of us at this council, I'm sure.
Completely agree. Yes, the baddies come up with new means to do bad things, don't they, on regular intervals. But I think we're in a much better place than we were. So I'm very grateful to all the efforts that have gone on, and I think our residents want to see us being robust in this. So the recommendation on page 155 is that Cabinet adopt the corporate fraud strategy, acknowledging the governing body's responsibility for ensuring that risks associated with fraud and corruption are managed effectively across all parts of the organisation. Do members agree?
Agree.
Anyone voting against? Anyone abstaining? No, so Cabinet therefore approves the recommendation. We're doing well, aren't we, so far? Famous last words. Okay. Now, this is really important. So, item 12 is the Mobile and Community Wardens Scheme. Councillor Henry Batchelor is going to present this, and Councillor John Williams, because there's a financial important element to this, will be seconding it. So, over to you, Councillor
Thank you,
Batchelor.
Leader. And as you've indicated, this is a very important scheme. I think one that the council's been involved in for a very long time, much sort of preceding our administration here, but it's a very important and well-received scheme in South Cambridgeshire. So what we're actually asking for is a commitment to continue that scheme for at least another 10 years. You'll see in the papers we're asking for the council to commit to £788,000 worth of funding over that 10-year period, with a vast bulk of that being in the first 3 years, so from next financial year onwards. We look to review this scheme it's roughly every 3 years, so we're at that point now, hence why we have this paper in front of us. I appreciate we've probably overloaded you with information in this report, but I think given the sort of amount of financial investment we're asking for, and also the sort of social importance of the scheme as well, we thought it's probably better to include more information for Cabinet. It's probably worth saying this. The same information has also been presented to scrutiny a couple of weeks ago, who gave it a very good going over. We have actually made some changes to the report based on comments from scrutiny at the time. So I do thank the scrutiny committee for their input there, because we have changed the report and improved it in my view. You will also see is that we also commissioned an external company, Rose Regeneration, to give us an external review of the scheme up to this point. And virtually all of the changes we're suggesting to make to that scheme have come as recommendations from Rose Regeneration. So this isn't us sort of guessing how we need to improve the scheme. It's actually us taking advice from an external party who have worked with the council on other support schemes over the years as well. You'll see as well in the financial table we are including sort of ongoing funding for the scheme year on year in case any new schemes come forward that want to start. I will say, actually, mobile warden schemes cover around 50% of South Cambridgeshire villages at the moment, which is I'd say quite a large coverage. I think there was a question raised at scrutiny about, what happens to the other 50%. I think the answer there is there are the opportunity to start schemes there, or there are other services from other providers that do cover those areas. So while they may not be covered by our mobile warden scheme, they are covered by a scheme, or have the opportunity to be covered by a scheme. In terms of just two more words of thanks I want to offer, one to Councillor Ellington, who's with us today. She's been very involved in the formation of this revision to the scheme that we're looking at today. So I thank her for her expertise on that front and her input. It was very helpful in actually forming what we're looking at today, and obviously also to the officers we have in our council here. I mean, they've been key in getting us to the point we're at now. I think their diligence and the fact they've been with the council a long time, so have been with the scheme for a long period of its, maybe not since its inception, but for long periods of it, I think has been key to actually keeping it going and keeping us to where we are today. So I just want to thank them. Obviously we have Catherine with us today. So I think that's all I'll probably say on that front. yeah, obviously, if there are any technical questions, we have Catherine with us here, and I believe Councillor MacDonald has agreed to second.
Thank you. I think it's Councillor Williams, actually, because he's...
Apologies, Councillor Williams, you're right.
He's the money man. So if I could come to you, John, and then I would like to come to Councillor Ellington, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'm delighted to be able to second this. Apart from being the money man, I'm also very supportive of the scheme, as Catherine knows, ever since we took control in 2018. I was always concerned about the financial viability of the schemes. Put this right, this isn't actually our scheme. These are schemes that are either provided by the local community or the parish council or Age UK, and we support them financially. We don't fully support them; they're not 100% supported by this council. We do expect the schemes to find other funding as well. So these are not. This isn't actually our scheme. It's an organic thing. It's grown out of what local communities want to do, and that's one of the reasons why it only covers half the district, because we rely on the local communities to make the decision themselves whether or not they want to provide a community warden or mobile warden. But this is an extremely important service for many elderly people who want to stay in their own homes but need some support, either physical support like shopping, etc., getting medicines, or just need friendship, you know, to overcome social isolation, particularly in a rural area like South Cam. So I've always felt that this is an extremely important service. I think we're the only district council, certainly in Cambridgeshire, that supports this, and I know we've been trying very hard to get other providers interested in what we do and give us their support as well, and I know that's continuing. But at least what this does, it puts it on a firm financial footing for the future. Everybody knows where they stand, what we expect them to do, and we guarantee that we will fund them, albeit in a tapered way, over the next 10 years. So I'm very pleased to be able to second this. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Ellington. Well, firstly, thank you for your input into this. But
thank you, Chairman. I have to say, I'm looking to the future for myself, you understand. But I think this council has really to be congratulated on the service provided for Community Warden Scheme. I continue to be appalled that the County Council and services, CBS? No. Yes, the Community Care Service are just not recognising how vitally important this is to a large number of our residents, to keep them in our own home. And I'm hoping that with the new government looking at health and social care and the NHS, that they will recognise it much more positively and that we can move forward. So I'm working on the basis that 10 years is quite a long time, and perhaps we will have found another way of dealing with the finances before that time runs out. But actually, the finances are clearly going to be an issue for some of these schemes, and I think we will have to try and help them to recognise how they can maybe increase the amount of money that they charge the residents, who, by ensuring that they claim all of their carers allowance and all the other opportunities that they have to increase their income in this relation. And I really feel that it is a vital service. It does keep people going. But maybe the one thing I would ask is, can we possibly change the name? because it does seem to me that some parish councils and some individuals see the concept of wardens as being somewhat like a prison, and that it would be a better opportunity. This is maybe an opportunity for us to think about making it more user-friendly.
Thank you. That's a really interesting comment. Catherine, have we thought about the kind of branding of it?
We have, yes. The funding is just one element of this package. The network of support that we're going to continue, having done it from January to June of this year, is the other part of it. And one of the many things they want to cover as a group of schemes when they come together is to look at renaming them and trying to have some wording in common amongst all of the schemes that demonstrates they are about care within the community, and move away from the term warden. And that's something the schemes themselves want to try to do, but without changing them all so much that nobody knows really what they are anymore. So our scheme, our grant funding scheme, would alter to reflect that, but that's just the name of the scheme, and that can happen easily.
I'm sure Councillor Ellington will be happy to work with you on that. Thank you very much indeed. Any questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Williams?
I'll start with the topic of conversation name. So the actual definition of warden is a person responsible for the supervision of a particular place or activity, or for enforcing the regulations associated with it.
Yes.
I suppose it all depends on your perception of it, but it feels like, you had table monitors at your dining room tables at school and things like that. It does feel very, very sort of, as Councillor Ellington says, kind of under the rule of the law. So that might help, because a scheme such as the one in my area, which is really valued by the people that have it, but you can see the numbers are quite low. And I think warden was something that people saw as something of safety, like air wardens and things, if you're a boomer or you're from the war period. But as life changes, and as I think, is it Gen Alpha or something? One of the generational changes. I know, Henry, I don't even know. We're millennials, so I'm clinging on to that. So yes, I think that'd be entirely appropriate. I will say that when I first had the briefing, and I thank officers for the briefing they gave to myself about this, I was concerned with year 10 being on zero for the core funding, because 10 years is a long time. I think when many of us got elected, I've been at the council 6 years ago, none of us thought that we would be dealing or see the things that we've seen, like COVID and everything else. So a lot can happen in this period. But if you look on page 271, on the first point, it says that its scheme will be reviewed every 3 years, of which I appreciate, and I would ask everybody involved in the process at whatever point to be really open-minded and flexible, that if circumstances are changing, that this flexes with it, because I don't think it is a service that our residents can afford to lose now or in 10 years' time, whenever it may be. But there is no guarantee of funding, or that the 10-year plan will complete. That previously there was said about reassurance and people know where they are, but that sentence may concern them. So Cabinet may want to give some reassurances with that in there.
Thank you very much. So yes, we sadly saw 3 schemes close in the last year because of 2 because of financial viability, and the other because the people actually running it, these things, they're heavily reliant on volunteers. So I think what the purpose of this work is to make it more resilient, because it's been very fragile, and anything that is overly reliant on funding from local authorities. And again, we don't know what's coming. The government's talking about review of business rates. That's going to could hit us hard. I think quite a lot of it's going to hit us hard, even though they say we're not going back to austerity. But over-reliance on local government funding means that things are fragile. And that, so I think the whole point of this is to build resilience into it, so that, people are paying a reasonable amount for the service, which we've heard, from everybody. they value, they're getting the benefits that they're entitled to in order that they can do that. But, you know, I think we as local members have a role to play here in awareness raising and encouraging more people to use the service, because the more people who use it, the more financially sustainable it's going to be. So, you know, it's nice to hear that we are all justly proud of this work. Thank you very much, Catherine, and I think Emma Dwyer has been heavily involved in this as well, so thank you very much. So going back to, there's no more questions. The recommendations are quite long on page 181, but basically to agree the funding for this, and then quite a lot of other things, which I'm sure you've read. So do members approve the recommendations?
Agreed.
Anyone voting against? Anyone abstaining? No, so we approve the recommendations. Thank you very much. And moving on to another thing that's very important to residents, the Communications Charter for Tenants. And John Batchelor is going to present this, and I'm very happy to second it. So over to you, John.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. So we have an annual survey of all our tenants and leaseholders every year, covering a whole range of possible issues. The last couple of years, it's been very clear that tenants are quite dissatisfied with the way we communicate, and in particular how we deal with complaints. So this is a reaction to that, to formalise what the expectations should be for tenants and leaseholders, and you know, also what is expected from our own staff. I'm happy to move the recommendation. Uzma, who's written the report, and Julie are both here today, so that should there be matters of detail, I'm sure they'll be able to deal with those. So, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Uzma and Julie, anything you want to add?
Just to say thank you for, good morning everyone, and thank you for allowing us to come to Cabinet. It's just really, just as Councillor Batchelor has said, it is a direct response to our tenants, and it is what a responsible landlord should do in terms of responding to their stakeholders. Thank you. Good.
Thank you very much indeed. I know you've done, and I know there's a massive work behind what's a fairly short report actually, but I know there's been a lot to do, and it's always very difficult to please all of the people all of the time. And it's about finding compromises that actually work for everybody. So thank you very much indeed. Any questions from Cabinet members? No, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I think those of us that I predominantly have council houses as opposed to housing association properties, and I've always found officers very promptly try to support whatever it is that our tenants need, and I just want to make it clear I've never had a bad response from our officers in any of my council housing inquiries. What I do have is issues with our contractors, and actually the contractors' information, for example, they turn up when they're not expected or don't turn up when they are expected. So I think this is great to have that real clear dialogue and how it's going to map out. But I think we also need to be tougher on our contractors in their communication, either with officers to then liaise with the residents or vice versa, because I had somebody that, in fact, actually Peter Campbell got involved, thankfully in the end, and we got it resolved with somebody. They wouldn't fix the roof was leaking, there was mould, because there were solar panels on, which we put on years ago, which is a great thing, because they couldn't get the solar panel people to take the panels off so they could fix the roof, and it ended up in a 18-month battle. But it wasn't because the council wasn't willing, it wasn't because the resident wasn't making way, but for contractors. So we need to perhaps be really clear with them and see if there's something that could be done to support communication with them.
Councillor Batchelor, do you want to respond to that?
Well, only to say I agree entirely. You know, we do have protocols with our main contractor, Mears, but the difficulty often comes when Mears is subcontracting again, and possibly the then subcontractor brings some other specialists in who are not aware of all the requirements. So we are very aware of that and doing our best to rectify that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, so the recommendation is that Cabinet approves the communications charter produced for tenants and leaseholders of South Cambs Housing Service at Appendix A, and the lead member of housing is given delegated authority to approve any minor amendments. Is that, do members agree?
Agreed.
Okay, anyone voting against? Anyone abstaining? No, so we accept the recommendations on item 13. Thank you both very much indeed. It's a good piece of work. Right, moving on to another good piece of work, which is the cost of living support update. And Councillor Henry Batchelor is going to present this, and I think Councillor Peter MacDonald is going to second it. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So some of the feedback we get from members of staff and members of and residents of South Cambs is that one of the main pieces of work that we do as a council that that the employees of the council are very proud of and that the residents really appreciate is our cost of living work. Hence why we bring sort of semi-regular updates on what we've been doing, what we're planning to do to Cabinet. I will say the report we've got in front of us today was due to come to the last Cabinet meeting, but obviously we weren't able to do that because we're in a pre-election period, so hence why some of the information might seem slightly out of date. I think we've essentially detailed what we've been doing. I think it's a relatively good news item that we're looking at here. So in terms of a more recent update for you, so you might remember last year we had a fund specifically for supporting people that needed it over winter with electric blankets. I'm pleased to announce that because of an underspend in that budget last year, we're now able to re-roll that scheme out again this year. So that's one thing that isn't included in the report, but I thought people might be interested in hearing about because I know that was a quite popular scheme that we ran last winter, and one that was certainly appreciated by those people that did need it. We have Chris Richards in the room with us, who's done 99% of the work on this, so if there are any questions of detail about the report, then obviously I'll hand over to Chris to respond to those. But no, I'm very happy to present the report as it is. Leader, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Leader. Just wanted to support the recommendations here. Two things I wanted to highlight, which were that the usage or attendance at the hubs was huge. 5,000 visitors, an average of 900 per month. Absolutely amazing. And secondly, the work that Chris and the other officers have done in terms of the electric blankets. People noticed a reduction in their energy bills. We know the previous government wouldn't help them in terms of the windfall tax and using that to support them. Hopefully the current government will do something about that. But we're certainly doing our bit locally. So well done to them all. Thank you.
Thank you. Really important work. And, this and the last two items have been, fantastic examples of where we directly touch the lives of many, many people. And, the fact that we can get out emergency food parcels within 48 hours is great. It's a real shame that we're having to do it. But it's a sad reality of life these days. Any questions from Cabinet members? Any questions from anyone else? No. Chris, thank you very much. I know you put huge effort into this, but I hope you're proud of what you've achieved, because we certainly are. So the recommendation is that Cabinet notes the report and provides officers with any comments as required. Everyone agree? Okay. Everyone against? Or abstaining? No. So recommendations are approved. Thank you. Thank you again, Chris. And right, the last item is agenda item 16. No, it's not. It's yes, it is. So we come to the point on our agenda where we need to consider whether to exclude the press and public from the meeting. This is because there's an appendix to the final report that contains information which is commercially sensitive. Members of the public are advised that if Cabinet agrees to exclude the press and public, the video stream will end when this appendix is discussed. I therefore propose, well, can we just, does anybody want to discuss anything that's in the excluded bit? No. So are we all right just to go on then? Just continue. All right. So if you could just indicate if you do want to stray into the excluded bit, and we will shut down the live stream. So this is with Liz, please. I think no, it's with Brian. It's with Brian, backed up by Liz. Thank you, Brian.
I think that may be the other way around, especially with my capacity to talk properly today. I very much recommend this report on changes to the way that 3C ICT operate. We have in the 6 years or so since I've been a member here made vast improvements to our ICT service. I remember only with some appall the levels of service we were and weren't getting, and in the intervening period that service has been much improved. But what we don't really have is a vision of the way that we could be in ICT. We don't really do much on digital services other than our website is our principal operation in that regard, and there's much opportunity available to us to make much more out of our digital services than we currently do. So this report recommends a way of moving forward with that. We were obliged to do so under the terms of the contract, because if we wanted to change it, we needed a year's notice to do so, which is why it comes to us now. But there's a huge amount of work being done by both officers and a third party who has given us advice in terms of the restructuring that we're talking about, which principally looks at appointment of a chief digital officer, chief digital information officer. And it will change the focus of our ICT business from being a business as usual services, which is what we've got now, to being an innovative and ultimately supporting our transformation programs to improve the service and efficiency of our service to our residents. So I'm very happy to recommend this. It's really been, I would suggest, a long time coming. So I'm delighted to be able to recommend this to my cabinet colleagues, and invite Liz to say anything if she wants to add.
You don't? Okay. We're changing the name, aren't we? We're calling it ICT Digital, are we now? Changing the service name. 3C Digital it's going to be called. Okay, which highlights that something's different. Hopefully quite a lot's different. Any questions from Cabinet members? No. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Leader. I really don't mind what the name is, so long as it works. But can we please have no more council aliases if it can be avoided with the way it's going across? Because I actually have 3 different email addresses for the council, and officers, public, everybody uses different ones. And then when it comes to logging in, you haven't got a clue. Like I've had so many problems, and as you know, at the moment, don't change too much because it's actually working for me. I know that might be advantageous for me not to get emails for the administration, but please don't. I do need to hear from my residents. But yeah, please tread with caution around the emails, because Insight still says I don't exist, which is fine. But do you know what I mean? Please tread carefully on the emails.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you said that, actually, because I also seem to have about three email addresses, and it's a... Oh yes, please. Yeah, Councillor Mills knows all about it.
So we were required by Cabinet protocols, that's Westminster Cabinet Office protocols, to have members on a different exchange tenancy than the officer call. And that has been the underpinning of the problems that you've just described. And we have struggled to actually bridge that gap, because we are technically less secure as members than the officers are. And we continue to try and make sure that works as well as possible. but I'm not convinced that we will get rid of the problem entirely, because of the nature of the construct that we have to have.
If I can, Leader, it seems like I drop off the all councillors. I've dropped off, so I didn't get Liz's things for about a month because it just drops off. And I think there's me and 2 other councillors that are affected. So if that can be incorporated, we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so yeah, this has captured that, and okay, yeah, it's not perfect, but I think there's, you know, as I say, it's been a bit on, well, it hasn't been on the back burner, it's just been a really, really difficult problem to solve, and it's taken a considerable amount of time, and yeah, Liz, you know, then instigated this independent review, and I think that's been the game changer. So I think we are now on an improvement trajectory, to use the jargon, whereas, you know, we were just kind of immobile, I think, at times before. So I think this is a good news story. So moving on to the recommendations, recommended Cabinet agree the recommended option 1, which is redesign 3C IDCT and digital lead authority, with the digital lead authority remaining as Huntingdon District Council, delegate the responsibility for finalising the scope and detailed nature of the new agreement and associated activities to the Chief Executives, and respective portfolio holders for each partnership council, reporting on progress through the revised member board. Are we all happy with that? Great. Members agree? Anyone voting against? Anyone abstaining? No, jolly good. So the recommendations are approved, which takes us 1 minute past 11 to the end. So it's the end of this meeting. Next meeting of Cabinet on the 5th of November. Fireworks. Thank you for all your time.